All right, let's do one more Bible reading, and then I'm going to eat. I'm freaking hungry. So um, I'm just going to have, I think, the shrimp, the frozen meal that I have. I'm going to clean up the kitchen area, put some dishes in the dishwasher, and then throw that on. All right, I am now on 2 Chronicles 21 to 29. Okay, let's do it. Back up. 29. 2 Chronicles 21. Then Jehoshaphat was laid to rest with his forefathers and was buried with his forefathers in the city of David. And his son Jehoram became king in his place. His brothers Jehoshaphat's sons were Azariah, Jehiel, Zechariah, Azariah. I've almost finished a whole gallon of water, or half gallon of water. Oh, that's good. That's what I should start doing. Drinking more water. Azareth, Michael, and Shephatiah. All of these were the sons of King Jehoshaphat of Israel, and their father had given them many gifts in silver and gold and valuable things, along with fortified cities in Judah. But he gave the kingdom to Jehoram, for he was the firstborn. When Jehoram had taken control of the kingdom of his father, he strengthened his position by killing all his brothers with the sword, as well as some of the princes of Israel. Jehoram was 32 years when he became king, and he reigned for 8 years in Jerusalem. He walked in the way of the kings of Israel, just as those of the house of Ahab had done, for Ahab's daughter had become his wife, and he kept doing what was bad in Jehovah's eyes. But Jehovah did not want to bring the house of David to ruin, for the sake of the covenant that he made with David, since he had promised to give a lamp to him and to his sons always. In his days Edom revolted against Judah, and then set up its own king. So Jehoram and his commanders crossed over with all the chariots, and he rose up by night and defeated the Edomites who were revolting, or who were surrounding him, and the chariot commanders. But Edom had kept up its revolt against Judah to this day. Libnah also revolted against him at that time, because he had abandoned Jehovah, the God of his forefathers. He had also made high places on the mountains of Judah to cause the inhabitants of Judah to commit spiritual prostitution, and he led Judah astray. Eventually a written message came to him from Elijah, the prophet, saying, "This is what Jehovah, the God of David, your forefather, says. You have not walked in the ways of your father Jehoshaphat, or in the ways of King Asa of Judah, but you walk in the way of the kings of Israel, and cause Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem to commit spiritual prostitution, like the prostitution of the house of Ahab. And you even killed your own brothers, the household of your father, who were better than you. Therefore, Jehovah is dealing a great blow to your people, to your sons, to your wives, and to all your possessions. And you will suffer with many sicknesses, including the disease of your intestines, until your intestines come out because of the disease this day after day." Oh, ouch. It's been a while since I've had a sharp pain like that. Ugh. Then Jehovah stirred up against Jehoram the Philistines and the Arabs who were near the Ethiopians. So they invaded Judah, forcing their way in, and carried off all the possessions that were found in the king's house, as well as his sons and his wives. And the only son left to him was Jehoahaz, his youngest son. And after all this, Jehovah afflicted him with an incurable disease in his intestines. Sometime later, when 2 full years had passed, his intestines came out because of his disease, and he died while suffering severely from his disease. And his people did not make a burning for him like the burning that was made for his forefathers. He was 32 years old when he became king, and he reigned for 8 years in Jerusalem. No one regretted it when he died, so they buried him in the city of David, but not in the burial places of the kings. 2 Chronicles 22. Then the inhabitants of Jerusalem made his youngest son, Ahaziah, king in his place, for the marauder band that came with the Arabs to the land had killed all the older ones. So Ahaziah, the son of Jehoram, began to reign as king for Judah. Ahaziah was 22 years old when he became king, and he reigned for 1 year in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Athaliah, the granddaughter of Omri. He too walked in the ways of the house of Ahab, for his mother became his adviser in acting wickedly. And he kept doing what was bad in Jehovah's eyes, like the house of Ahab, for they became his advisers after the death of his father to his destruction. He followed their advice and went with Jehoram, the son of King Ahab of Israel, to wage war against King Hazael of Syria at Ramoth Gilead, where the archers wounded Jehoram. He returned to Jezreel to recover from the wounds that they had inflicted on him at Ramah when he fought against King Hazael of Syria. Ahaziah, the son of Jehoram, the king of Judah, went down to Jezreel to see Jehoram, the son of Ahab, because he had been wounded. But God brought about the downfall of Ahaziah by his coming to Jehoram, and when he came, he went out with Jehoram to meet Jehu, the grandson of Nimshi, whom Jehovah had anointed to do away with the house of Ahab. When Jehu began to execute judgment on the house of Ahab, he found the princes of Judah and the sons of Ahaziah's brothers, ministers of Ahaziah, and he killed them. Then he looked for Ahaziah. They captured him where he was hiding in Samaria, and they brought him to Jehu. Then they put him to death and buried him, for they said, "He is the grandson of Jehoshaphat, who searched for Jehovah with all his heart." There was no one of the house of Ahaziah who had the power to rule the kingdom. When Athaliah, Ahaziah's mother, saw that her son had died, she rose up and destroyed the entire royal line of the house of Judah. However, Jehoshabeath, the daughter of the king, took Jehoash, the son of Ahaziah, and stole him away from among the sons of the king who were to be put to death, and she put him and his nurse in an inner bedroom. Jehoshabeath, the daughter of King Jehoram, she was the wife of Jehoiada, the priest of the sister of Ahaziah, managed to keep him concealed from Athaliah, so that she did not put him to death. He remained with them for 6 years, hidden at the house of the true God, while Athaliah was ruling over the land. 2 Chronicles 23. In the 7th year, Jehoiada acted courageously and made a pact with the chiefs of hundreds, namely Azariah, the son of Jeroham, Ishmael, the son of Jehohanan, Azariah, the son of Obed, Maaseiah, the son of Adiah, and Elishaphat, the son of Zichri. Then they went throughout Judah and gathered together the Levites from all the cities of Judah and the heads of the paternal houses of Israel. When they came to Jerusalem, the entire congregation made a covenant with the king of the house in the house of the true God, after which he said to them, "Look, the king's son will reign, just as Jehovah promised concerning the sons of David. This is what you are to do. 1/3 of the priests and of the Levites who will be on duty on the Sabbath will be doorkeepers. Another third will be at the house of the king, and the other third will be at the gate of the foundation, and all the people will be in the courtyards of the house of Jehovah. Do not let anyone enter into the house of Jehovah, except the priests and the Levites who are ministering. These may enter because they are a holy group, and all the people who will keep the obligation to Jehovah. The Levites must surround the king on every side, with his weapon in hand. Anyone entering the house will be put to death. Stay with the king wherever he goes." The Levites and all Judah did exactly what Jehoiada the priest had commanded. So each one took his men who were on duty on the Sabbath, together with those who were off duty on the Sabbath, for Jehoiada the priest had not dismissed the divisions from their duty. Jehoiada the priest then gave the chiefs of hundreds the spears and the bucklers, and the circular shields that had belonged to King David. Which were in the house of the true God. He then stationed all the people, each with his weapon in hand, from the right side of the house to the left side of the house, by the altar and by the house, all around the king. Then they brought the king's son out and put on him the crown and the testimony, and made him king. And Jehoiada and his sons anointed him. Then they said, "Long live the king." When Athaliah heard the sound of the people running and praising the king, she immediately came to the people at the house of Jehovah. Then she saw the king standing there by his pillar at the entrance. The princes and the trumpeters were with the king, and all the people of the land were rejoicing and blowing the trumpets. and the singers with musical instruments were leading the praises. At this, Athaliah ripped her garments apart and cried out, "Conspiracy! Conspiracy!" But Jehoiada the priest brought out the chiefs of hundreds, those appointed over the army, and said to them, "Take her out from among the ranks, and if anyone follows her, put him to death with the sword." For the priest had said, "Do not put her to death in the house of Jehovah." So they seized her, and when she had reached the entrance of the horse gate of the king's house, they immediately put her to death there. Then Jehoiada made a covenant between himself and all the people and the king, and they would continue as the house of people of Jehovah. After that, all the people came to the house of Baal and tore it down, and they smashed his altars and his images, and they killed Mattan the priest of Baal in front of the altars. Then Jehoiada put the oversight of the house of Jehovah in the hands of the priests of the Levites, whom David had assigned in divisions over the house of Jehovah, to offer up the burnt sacrifices of Jehovah according to what is written in the law of Moses, with rejoicing and with song as directed by David. He also stationed the gatekeepers by the gates of the house of Jehovah, so that no one unclean in any respect could enter. He now took the chiefs of hundreds, the nobles, the rulers of the people, and all the people of the land, and escorted the king down from the house of Jehovah. Then they came through the upper gate to the king's house, and seated the king on the throne of the kingdom. So all the people of the land rejoiced, and the city was quiet, for they had put Athaliah to death with the sword. 2 Chronicles 24. Jehoash was 7 years old when he became king, and he reigned for 40 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Zibiah from Beersheba. Jehoash continued doing what was right in Jehovah's eyes all the days of Jehoiada the priest. Jehoiada chose 2 wives for him, and he became father to sons and daughters. Afterward, it was the heart's desire of Jehoash to renovate the house of Jehovah. So he gathered the priests and the Levites together and said to them, "Go out to the cities of Judah and collect money from all Israel to repair the house of your God from year to year, and you should act quickly in the matter." But the Levites did not act quickly. So the king called Jehoiada the chief and said to him, "Why have you not required the Levites to bring in from Judah and Jerusalem the sacred tax ordered by Moses, the servant of Jehovah, the sacred tax of the congregation of Israel for the tent of the testimony?" For the sons of Athaliah, that wicked woman had broken into the house of the true God, and they had used all the holy things of the house of Jehovah for the Baals. Then at the king's order, a chest was made and placed outside at the gate of the house of Jehovah. After that, a proclamation was issued throughout Judah and Jerusalem to bring to Jehovah the sacred tax that Moses, the servant of the true God, had imposed on Israel in the wilderness. All the princes and all the people rejoiced, and they kept bringing contributions and dropping them in the chest until it was full. Whenever the Levites brought the chest in to be turned over to the king, and they saw that there was a great deal of money in it, the secretary of the king and the commissioner of the chief of the priest would come and empty the chest, and they would take it back to its place. That was what they did from day to day, and they gathered money in abundance. Then the king and Jehoiada would give it to those supervising the work of the service of Jehovah's house, and they would hire the stonecutters and the craftsmen for renovating Jehovah's house, and also workers in iron and copper to repair Jehovah's house. And those supervising the work got it started, and the repair work progressed under their supervision, and they restored the house of the true God to its proper condition and reinforced it. And as soon as they finished, they brought the money that was left over to the king and Jehoiada, and they used it to make utensils for the house of Jehovah, utensils for the ministry, and for making offerings and cups and utensils of gold and of silver. And they would offer up burnt sacrifices at the house of Jehovah regularly all the days of Jehoiada. When Jehoiada was old and satisfied with years, he died. He was 130 years old at his death. So they buried him in the city of David along with the kings, because he had done good in Israel, with respect to the true God in his house. After Jehoiada's death, the princes of Judah came and bowed down to the king, and the king listened to them. They abandoned the house of Jehovah, the God of their forefathers, and began serving the sacred poles and the idols. So that God's anger came against Judah and Jerusalem because of their guilt. He kept sending prophets among them to bring them back to Jehovah, and they kept warning them, but they refused to listen. God's Spirit came upon Zechariah, the son of Jehoiada, the priest, and he stood above the people and said to them, "This is what the true God says. Why are you violating the commandments of Jehovah? You will not be successful, because you have abandoned Jehovah, he will in turn abandon you." But they conspired against him and stoned him at the king's order in the courtyard of Jehovah's house. Thus King Jehoash did not remember the loyal love that his father Jehoiada had shown toward him, and he killed his son, who said he was dying. May Jehovah see to it, and call you to account. Ouch. Okay. At the beginning of the year, the Syrian army came against Jehoash, and they invaded Judah and Jerusalem. Then they did away with the princes of the people, and they sent all their spoil to the king of Damascus. For although the invading Syrian army had a small number of men, Jehovah handed over to them a very large army, because they had abandoned Jehovah, the God of their forefathers. So they executed judgment on Jehoash. And when they withdrew from him, for they left him severely wounded, his own servants conspired against him because he had shed the blood of the sons of Jehoiada, the priest. They killed him on his own bed, so he died, and they buried him in the city of David. But they did not bury him in the burial places of the kings. These were the conspirators against him: Zabad the son of Shimeath, the Ammonitess, and Jehozabad the son of Shimrith, the Moabitess. Regarding his sons and the many pronouncements against him, and the renovation of the house of the true God, all these things are recorded in the writings of the book of the kings. And his son Amaziah became king in his place. Just got to double check. 29, yeah. Yeah, 21 to 29, that's right. Right, 2 Chronicles 25. Amaziah was 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned for 29 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Jehoaddan of Jerusalem. He continued to do what was right in Jehovah's eyes, but not with a complete heart. As soon as he had the kingdom firmly in his control, he killed his servants who had killed his father the king. But he did not put their sons to death, for he acted in harmony with what is written in the law, in the book of Moses, where Jehovah commanded, "Fathers should not die for their sons, and sons should not die for their fathers, but each one should die for his own sin." And Amaziah gathered Judah together and had them stand according to the paternal houses. For the chiefs of thousands and the chiefs of hundreds, for all Judah and Benjamin, he registered them from the 20 years old and up, and he found them to be 300,000 trained warriors to serve in the army, able to handle the lance and the large shields. Further, he hired from Israel 100,000 mighty warriors for 100,000 silver talents. But a man of the true God came to him, saying, "O king, do not let the army of Israel go with you, for Jehovah is not with Israel, not with any of the Ephraimites. But go by yourself, act and be courageous in battle. Otherwise, the true God could cause you to stumble before an enemy. For God has the power to help and to cause stumbling." And at this Amaziah said to the man of the true God, "But what about the 100 talents that I have given to the troops of Israel?" The man of the true God replied, "Jehovah has the means to give you much more than that." So Amaziah dismissed the troops that had come to him from Ephraim, sending them to their own place. However, they were very angry with Judah, so they returned to their own place in the heat of anger. Then Amaziah took courage and led his own troops to the valley of Salt, and he struck down 10,000 men of Seir. And the men of Judah captured 10,000 alive, so they brought them to the top of the crag and threw them down from the top of the crag, and they were all dashed to pieces. But the members of the troop, whom Amaziah had sent back from accompanying him to the war, were making raids on the cities of Judah, from Samaria clear to Beth-horon. They struck down 3,000 of them and took much spoil. But after Amaziah returned from striking down the Edomites, he brought the gods of the men of Seir and set them up for himself as gods. And he began to bow down before them and to make sacrificial smoke to them. So Jehovah grew very angry with Amaziah, and he sent a prophet who said to him, "Why are you following the people's gods that did not rescue their own people out of your hands?" As he spoke to him, the king said, "Did we appoint you as an advisor to the king? Stop! Why should they strike you down?" Then the prophet quit, but he added, "I know that God has decided to bring you to ruin, because you have done this, and you have not listened to my advice." After consulting with his advisors, King Amaziah of Judah sent a message to Jehoash, son of Jehoahaz, son of Jehu, the king of Israel, saying, "Come, let us confront each other in battle." King Jehoash of Israel sent this message to King Amaziah of Judah. The thorny weed in Lebanon sent a message to the cedar in Lebanon. "Give your daughter to my son as a wife." However, a wild beast of Lebanon passed by and trampled down the thorny weed. You have said, "Look, I have struck down Edom." So your heart has become arrogant, wanting to be glorified. But now stay in your house. Why should you provide disaster and fall, bringing Judah down with you? But Amaziah did not listen, for this was from the true God to give them into the hand of the enemy, because they had followed the gods of Edom. So King Jehoash of Israel went up, and he and King Amaziah of Judah confronted each other in battle at Bethshemesh, which belongs to Judah. Judah was defeated by Israel, so each one fled to his home. King Jehoash of Israel captured King Amaziah of Judah, son of Jehoash, son of Jehoahaz, at Bethshemesh. Then he brought him to Jerusalem and made a breach in the wall of Jerusalem from the gate of Ephraim to the corner gate, 400 cubits. He took all the gold and silver and all the articles that were found in the house of the true God with Obed-Edom, and in the treasuries of the king's house, as well as the hostages. Then he returned to Samaria. Amaziah, the son of Jehoash, the king of Judah, lived for 15 years after the death of Jehoash, the son of Jehoahaz, the king of Israel. As for the rest of the history of Amaziah, from beginning to end, look, is it not written in the book of the kings of Judah and of Israel? From the time that Amaziah turned away from following Jehovah, they formed a conspiracy against him in Jerusalem, and he fled to Lachish. But they sent men after him to Lachish and put him to death there. So they carried him back on horses and buried him with his forefathers in the city of Judah. 2 Chronicles 26. Then all the people of Judah took Uzziah, who was 16 years old, and made him king in the place of his father Amaziah. He rebuilt Eloth and restored it to Judah after the king was laid to rest with his forefathers. Uzziah was 16 years old when he became king, and he reigned for 52 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Jechaliah of Jerusalem. He continued to do what was right in Jehovah's eyes, just as his father Amaziah had done. And he kept searching for God in the days of Zechariah, who taught him to fear the true God. During the time he was searching for Jehovah, the true God made him prosper. He went out and fought against the Philistines and broke through the wall of Gath, the wall of Jabneh, and the wall of Ashdod. Then he built cities in the territory of Ashdod and among the Philistines. The true God continued to help him against the Philistines, against the Arabians, who were dwelling in Gurbaal, and against the Meunim. The Ammonites began to give tribute to Uzziah. His fame eventually spread as far as Egypt, for he became extremely powerful. Moreover, Uzziah built towers in Jerusalem by the corner gate, the valley gate, and the buttress, and he fortified them. Further, he built towers in the wilderness and dug many cisterns, for he had a great deal of livestock. He also did so in the Shephelah and on the plain. He had farmers and vine dressers in the mountains and in Carmel, for he loved agriculture. Moreover, Uzziah came to have an army equipped for war. They would go out on military campaigns organized in divisions. They were numbered and registered by Jael, the secretary, and Maaseiah, the officer, under the command of Hadaniah, one of the king's princes. The entire number of the heads of the paternal houses who were over these mighty warriors was 2,600. The armed forces under their commands numbered 307,500 men ready for war, a powerful military force to support the king against the enemy. Uzziah equipped the entire army with shields, lances, helmets, coats of mail, bows, and sling stones. Further, in Jerusalem, he made engines of war designed by engineers. They were set on the towers and on the corners of the walls, and could shoot arrows and large stones. So his fame spread far and wide, for he received tremendous help and he became strong. However, as soon as he was strong, his heart became haughty to his own ruin, and he acted unfaithfully against Jehovah his God by entering the temple of Jehovah to burn incense on the altar of incense. Immediately, Azariah, the priest, and 80 other courageous priests of Jehovah went in after him. They confronted King Uzziah and said to him, "It is not proper for you, Uzziah, to burn incense to Jehovah. It is only the priests who should burn incense, for they are the descendants of Aaron, those who have been sanctified. Go out from the sanctuary, for you have acted unfaithfully, and you will receive no glory from Jehovah God for this." But Uzziah, who had a censer in his hand to burn incense, became enraged, and during his rage against the priests, leprosy broke out on his forehead in the presence of the priests of the house of Jehovah next to the altar of incense. When Azariah, the chief of priests, and all the priests turned toward him, they saw that he had been stricken with leprosy in his forehead. So they rushed him out of there. and he remained hurried out because Jehovah had struck him. Okay. King Uzziah remained a leper until the day of his death, and he kept staying in a separate house as a leper, for he had been excluded from the house of Jehovah. His son Jotham was in charge of the king's house, judging the people of the land. And the rest of the history of Uzziah from beginning to end was recorded by the prophet Isaiah, the son of Amos. Then Uzziah was laid to rest with his forefathers, and they buried him with his forefathers, but in the burial field that belonged to the kings, for they said, "He is a leper," and his son Jotham became king in his place. 2 Chronicles 27. Jotham was 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned for 16 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Jerusha, the daughter of Zadok. He kept doing what was right in Jehovah's eyes, just as his father Uzziah had done, except that he did not invade the temple of Jehovah, but the people were still acting ruinously. He built the upper gate of Jehovah's house, and he did much building on the wall of Ophel. He also built cities in the mountainous region of Judah, and he built fortified places and towers in the wooded areas. He waged war against the king of the Ammonites, and eventually prevailed against them, so that the Ammonites gave him in that year 100 silver talents, 10,000 core measures of wheat, and 10,000 of barley. The Ammonites also paid this to him in the second and third years. So Jotham kept growing strong, for he established his ways before Jehovah his God. As for the rest of the history of Jotham, all his wars and his ways, it is written in the book of the kings of Israel and of Judah. He was 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned for 16 years in Jerusalem. Then Jotham was laid to rest with his forefathers, and they buried him in the city of David. And his son Ahaz became the king in his place. 2 Chronicles 28. Ahaz was 20 years old when he became king, and he reigned for 16 years in Jerusalem. He did not do what was right in Jehovah's eyes, as David his forefather had done. Instead, he walked in the ways of the kings of Israel, and he made metal statues of the Baals. Moreover, he made sacrificial smoke in the valley of the son of Hinnom, and burnt up his sons in the fire. Before the detestable practices of the nations that Jehovah had driven out from before the Israelites, he also kept sacrificing and making sacrificial smoke on the high places, on the hills, and under every luxuriant tree. So Jehovah his God gave him into the hand of the king of Israel, who inflicted on him a great slaughter. For Pekah, the son of Remaliah, killed in Judah 120,000 in one day, all brave men, because they had abandoned Jehovah, the God of their forefathers. And Zikri, an Ephraimite warrior, killed the king's son Maaseiah, and Azrikam, who was in charge of the palace, and Elkanah, who was second to the king. Moreover, the Israelites took 200,000 of their brothers captive, women, sons, and daughters. They also seized a great deal of spoil, and they took the spoil to Samaria. But a prophet of Jehovah named Oded was there. He went out before the army that was coming to Samaria and said to them, "Look, it was because Jehovah, the God of your forefathers, was angry with Judah that he gave them into your hands, and you slaughtered them with a fury that has reached clear to the heavens. And now you intend to make the people of Judah and Jerusalem your male and female servants. Nevertheless, are you not also guilty before Jehovah your God? Now listen to me and return the captives whom you took from your brothers, for Jehovah's burning anger is against you." At that, some of the chiefs of the Ephraimites, Azariah, the son of Jehoahan, Berechiah, the son of Meshillemoth, Jehizekiah, the son of Shallum, and Amasa, the son of Hadlai, confronted those coming in from the military campaign, and they said to them, "Do not bring the captives in here, for it will make us guilty before Jehovah. What you intend to do will add our sins to our guilt, for our guilt is already great, and there is burning anger against Israel." So the armed soldiers handed over the captives and the plunder to the princes and the entire congregation. Then the men who had been designated by name rose up and took hold of the captives, and they provided clothes from the spoil for all those among them who were naked. So they fully clothed them and gave them sandals, food and drink, and oil for their skin. Furthermore, they transported the feeble on donkeys and brought them to their brothers in Jericho. the city of palm trees. After that they returned to Samaria. At that time King Ahaz asked the kings of Assyria for help. At once again the Edomites invaded and attacked Judah and carried off captives. The Philistines also made a raid on the cities of the Shephelah and the Negeb of Judah and captured the Bethshemesh, Aijalon, Gederoth, Soko, and its dependent towns, Timnah and its dependent towns, Gimzo and its dependent towns, and they settled there. Jehovah humbled Judah because of King Ahaz of Israel, for he had let Judah go unrestrained, resulting in great unfaithfulness toward Jehovah. King Tilgath-Pilneser of Assyria eventually came against him and caused him distress, rather than strengthening him. For Ahaz had stripped the house of Jehovah and the house of the king and the house of the princes and made a gift to the king of Assyria, but it was of no help to him. And during the time of distress, King Ahaz acted even more unfaithfully toward Jehovah. He began to sacrifice to the gods of Damascus that had defeated him. And he went on to say, because the gods of the kings of Syria are helping them, I will sacrifice to them so that they may help me. But they caused him and all Israel to stumble. Furthermore, Ahaz collected the utensils of the house of the true God. He then cut to pieces the utensils of the house of the true God, closed the doors of the house of Jehovah, and made altars for himself in every corner of Jerusalem. And in all the cities of Judah, he made high places for making sacrificial smoke to other gods. And he offended Jehovah, the God of his forefathers. As for the rest of his history, all his dealings from Israel beginning to end, there it is written in the book of the kings of Judah and of Israel. Then Ahaz was laid to rest with his forefathers, and they buried him in the city, in Jerusalem, for they did not bring him into the burial places of the kings of Israel, and his son Hezekiah became king in his place. 2 Chronicles 29. Hezekiah became king at the age of 25, and he reigned for 29 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Abijah, the daughter of Zechariah. He kept doing what was right in Jehovah's eyes, just as David his forefather had done. In the first year of his reign, in the first month, he opened the doors of the house of Jehovah and repaired them. Then he brought the priests and the Levites and assembled them in the square to the east. He said to them, Listen to me, you Levites. Now sanctify yourselves and sanctify the house of Jehovah, the God of your forefathers, and remove what is impure from the holy place. For our forefathers have been unfaithful and have done what was bad in the eyes of Jehovah, our God. They abandoned him and turned their faces away from the tabernacle of Jehovah and turned their back on him. They also closed the doors of the porch and extinguished the lamps. They stopped burning incense and offering up burnt sacrifices in the holy place to God of Israel. Therefore, Jehovah's indignation came against Judah and Jerusalem, so that he made them an object of horror and astonishment and a cause for whistling, as you can see with your own eyes. Here our forefathers fell by the sword, and our sons, our daughters, and our wives went into captivity for this. Now it is my heart's desire to make a covenant with Jehovah, the God of Israel, so that his burning anger may turn away from us. My sons, now is not the time to be negligent, for Jehovah has chosen you to stand before him, to serve as his ministers, and to make his sacrifices smoke. At that the Levites rose up. Mahath, the son of Amasai, and Joel, the son of Azariah, of the Kohathites from the Merarites, Kish, the son of Abdi, and Azariah, the son of Jehalalel, from the Gershonites, Joah, the son of Zimmah, and Eden, the son of Joah. From the sons of Elizaphan, Shimri and Joel, from the sons of Asaph, Zechariah and Mattaniah, from the sons of Heman, Jehiel and Shimei, from the sons of Jeduthun, Shemaiah, and Uzziel. Then they gathered their brothers together and sanctified themselves and came as the king had commanded by the words of Jehovah to cleanse the house of Jehovah. The priest then went inside the house of Jehovah to do the cleansing and brought out all the uncleanness that they found in the temples of Jehovah and took it to the courtyard of the house of Jehovah, and in turn the Levites took it and carried it outside to the Kidron Valley. Thus they began the sanctification on the first day of the first month, and on the 8th day of the month they reached the porch of Jehovah. They sanctified the house of Jehovah for 8 days, and on the 16th day of the first month they finished. After that they went in to King Hezekiah and said, We have cleansed the whole house of Jehovah, the altar of burnt offering, and all its utensils, and the table of the laver bread, and all its utensils. And all the utensils that King Ahaz cast aside during his reign, when he acted unfaithfully, we have made ready and sanctified. and they are before the altar of Jehovah. And King Hezekiah got up early and gathered the princes of the city together, and they went up to the house of Jehovah. They brought 7 bulls, 7 rams, 7 male lambs, and 7 male goats as a sin offering for the kingdom, for the sanctuary, and for Judah. So he told the priests, the descendants of Aaron, to offer them up on the altar of Jehovah. Then they slaughtered the cattle, and the priest took the blood and sprinkled it on the altar. Next they slaughtered the rams and sprinkled the blood on the altar, and they slaughtered the male lambs and sprinkled the blood on the altar. Then they brought the male goats of the sin offering before the king and the congregation and laid their hands on them. The priest then slaughtered them and made a sin offering with their blood on the altar to make atonement for all Israel, because the king said that the burnt offering and the sin offering should be for all Israel. Meanwhile, he had the Levites stationed at the house of Jehovah with cymbals, stringed instruments, and harps, by the commandment of David and of Gad, the king's visionary, and of Nathan the prophet, for the commandment was from Jehovah through his prophets. So the Levites were standing with the instruments of David, and the priests with the trumpets. Then Hezekiah ordered that the burnt sacrifice be offered on the altar. When the burnt offering started, the song of Jehovah started, and also the trumpets, following the direction of the instruments of King David of Israel. And the whole congregation bowed down while the song was sung and the trumpets were sounding. And this all continued until the burnt offering was finished. And as soon as they finished making the offering, the king of all those with him bowed low and prostrated themselves. King Hezekiah and the princes now told the Levites to praise Jehovah with the words of David and of Asaph the visionary. So they offered praise with great rejoicing, and they bowed down and prostrated themselves. Then Hezekiah said, "Now that you have been set apart for Jehovah, come and bring sacrifices and thanksgiving offerings to the house of Jehovah." So the congregation began to bring sacrifices and thanksgiving offerings, and everyone with a willing heart brought burnt offerings. The number of burnt offerings that the congregation brought was 70 cattle, 100 rams, 200 male lambs, all of these as a burnt offering to Jehovah. And the holy offerings were 600 cattle and 3,000 of the flock. But there were not enough priests to skin all the burnt offerings, so their brothers the Levites helped them out, until the work was finished, and until the priests could sanctify themselves. For the Levites were more conscientious about sanctifying themselves than the priests were. Also, there were many burnt offerings, as well as the fat pieces of the communion sacrifices, and the drink offerings for the burnt offerings. Thus the service of the house of Jehovah was restored. So Hezekiah and all the people rejoiced over what the true God had established for the people, for this had all happened so suddenly. Okay, that's the end of AV44.